material we're dealing with to manual handle it. We're looking at techniques to handle it appropriately. And secondly, we're looking at lifting techniques are undertaking safe work standards and safe operating procedures. So this will be our two objectives for today, for the lesson, right? Alright. Alright, so I'll just shoot a handout to you guys. We can follow on the board as well, with the notes, right? Alright, so just answer your name, please. Fredericks? No. Speakers?
Yes, sir.
Ronan?
Yes, sir.
Holder?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So based on the handout, we have the course title, which is the entire program, CCMARA 1007 CBQ Level 1 in refrigeration air conditioning. CBQ means Caribbean Occasional Qualification. We all know that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So our assessment code is ME00158, manual handling lifting. Now, we look at the regulation for manual handling lifting, which was amended in 2000. The regulation actually was in 1992 and it amended in 2002. And it applies to a wide range of manual handling activities, including lifting, lower, pushing, pulling, or carrying the load. And may either be animate, such as a person or an animal, or inanimate, such as a box or trolley. Now, even though over here on the wall, I have a poster here, right, to show you guys how to actually manually lift using safe lifting techniques, the do's and the don'ts in lifting materials, right? Additionally, there's a picture showing here with a female and a male, how you can actually manage the weight from the elbow to the arm length. Right? So female can only fetch a certain weight, whereas the male can only lift an amount of weight as well. Also, even notice if there is inappropriate technique using to lift any material, it also calls straight to the back, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What else do you guys notice on the poster?
Yeah. Proper way to lift load. Proper technique.
Okay. Alright, so this is basically, look here, following notes. So we want to know what is the problem, right? With manual handling and lifting. So incorrect manual handling is one of the most common causes of injury at work. It causes work-related musculoskeletal disorder, or MSD, which account for over a third of workplace injuries. Manual handling injuries can happen anywhere. People are at work, on farms, on building sites, in factories, offices, warehouse, hospitals, bank, laboratories, and while making deliveries. So those are just some examples of what could contribute to manual handling injuries. We there?
Yes, sir.
So heavy manual labor or awkward postures, manually materials handling, and previously or existing injury are all risk factors in developing musculoskeletal disorders. Now, this is more information and advice on MSD, which is a musculoskeletal disorder, right? On the health safety website, including advice on managing back pain at work. So those are two areas you can research, right? On the net, right? The health and safety website on musculoskeletal disorder, and you get more info. Now, taking action on it described here will help to prevent these injuries and is likely to be cost effective. But have MSD, so it is still essential to encourage early reporting of symptoms. Meaning, if you go about using the wrong techniques, right, and your injury may occur to your body, it will cost you more expense in terms of spending for medical facility, or what should I say, treatments, right? Now, what we should do about it? Now, there are three things we can do. There are two things actually. We can consider the risk for manual handling to the health and safety of our employees. This guidance will help you to do this. If there are risks the regulations apply, you can consult and involve workforce, your employees, and their respective representatives know firsthand what the risks in the workplace are. They can probably offer a practical solution to controlling them. And these are the regulations required to employees too. Or what? Avoid the need for hazards manual handling. So far, it is reasonably practicable. Number two, assess the risk of injury from any hazardous manual handling that can be avoided. And number three, reduce the risk of injury from hazardous manual handling so far as it is possible practically. Now, these points are explained in detail under avoiding manual handling and assessing and reducing the risk of injury. So, on here, I'll explain a bit more on this, right?
Yes, sir.
Employees have duties too, and they should be. Now, as an employee of our organization, these are things that you must do. Follow system of work in place for the safety, use equipment provided for the safety, property, cooperate with employee on health and safety matters, informing employer if they identify hazard handling activities, and lastly, take care to manage to make sure the activities do not put others at risk. So these are some things that the employees must do in the work environment to avoid any injury contributing to their colleagues or other persons in the work environment. So we're moving on. Avoid manual handling lifting. So you can check whether you need to move it at all. For example, does a larger workplace really need to be moved, or can the activity, for example, wrapping or matching, be done safely where an item already is? Guys, got any idea what is wrapping and matching?
No, sir.
Alright, so basically, for large area, wrapping and matching, it's like when you're packaging an item, right? You don't just wrap the plastic around, right? And these things? So those are the good examples. Alright, now raw materials be delivered directly to their point of use. Now when you have a raw material, let's use for example, you have a truck with lumber or wood material that's cut out, right? That the material will be considered raw material, and how you handle it in the work environment, right? Will determine whether you can avoid injuries or accidents from reoccurring by manually handling or lifting those materials. Now these are some things to consider to make work easier. Consider automation practically for new process. Think about the mechanism and use handling aids, for example. So you can use things like a conveyor, a pallet truck, an electric or hand power hoist, a lift truck, as an example of lifting materials and make it easy rather than actually manually handle it for the tailor. You guys follow?
Yes, sir.
You sure?
Yes, sir.
Alright. So these are some things to look at. So it's saying beware of hazards. Now, even though you have automated machines to do the lifting, you still might find that there are things that contribute to accident. Right? For example, automated plant still needs to be cleaning and maintained. So like if you have a forklift, even though it is doing all the lifting for you guys, right? You still have to maintain that forklift and still have to clean it for it to work efficiently. And number two, the truck must be suited to the work and have proper trained operators. So, even if you have a forklift, right, I don't have a good operator, that could also contribute to hazards or accidents, right? In addition, they will not know to operate the machine efficiently or properly, so that as well, they could cause accident. Now, these are some things to control the risk. As part of managing the health and safety of your business, you must control the risk in your workplace. To do this, you need to think about what might cause harm to people and decide whether you are doing enough to prevent harm. This process is known as risk assessment, and it is something you are required by law to carry out. Now, mainly the businessmen, right, they are required by law. However, within an institution or a industry, right, it is also advisable that you carry out what we call a risk assessment. It basically a survey to see what are the things that will contribute to an accident or which cause injury within the work environment. A risk assessment is about identifying and taking sensible and proportionate measures to control the risk in your workplace, not about creating a huge amount of paperwork. You are probably already taking steps to protect your employees, but the risk assessment will help you decide whether you should be doing more. So the risk assessment is like, even though you are taking precautions, that will give you a more wider scope or range for you to actually protect your employees, right? Or people working in industrial site. For your handout, think how accidents and ill health can happen and concentrate on the real risk. So, those are most likely and which will cause the most harm. The following might help. So these are some points to be noted. Think about your workplace activities, process, and substance use that could injure your employees or harm their health. Secondly, ask your employees what they think the hazards are, as they may notice things that are not obvious to you and may have some good ideas on how to control them. So, if your boss says he might know about some hazards, however, if you have a one-to-one session with him, or maybe as a group, speak with him, right? You know, some people work at the industry, so they have a more wide range of knowledge or experience in. So, in dealing with the hazard, right, it is advisable that you can have discussions with your employer so as to report this incident. Number 3, check manufacturing instruction or data sheet for chemicals and equipment, as they can be very helpful in spilling out the hazards. So, on point number 3, you must always check the equipment for what they call a manufacturer specification. Basically, that is a label behind every electrical equipment, right? For appliance, where they show the voltage, the current, the frequency, right? And these things. And that manufacturer specification will guide you in terms of powering the equipment, right? How it should be or how it should be powered. Rather than you just go plug into a pipe and then you realize you're plugging around voltage and the equipment starts smoking. Right?
Yeah.
Alright, number 4, some workers may have particular requirements. For example, young workers, migrant workers, new expectant mothers, people with disabilities, temporary workers, contractors, home workers, and home workers may be at particular risk. So, people who are not aware of hazards, right? People who are not aware of hazard may get injured or may be injured once they are not following manufacturer specification. So, having identified the hazard, you are then have to decide how likely it is that will harm will occur. Risk is a part of everyday life, and you are not expected to eliminate all risk. What you must do is make sure you know about the main risk and the things you need to do to manage them responsibly. Generally, you need to do everything reasonable, practicable to protect people from harm. And you gotta make a record of your significant findings, that will be the hazards, how people might be harmed by them, and what you have in place to control the risk. Any record produced should be simple and focus on controls. If you have fewer than 5 employees, you do not have to write anything down. However, it is useful to do this so you can review it later. For example, if something changes, you have 5 or more employees, you are required by law to write it down. Now, so basically, in terms of hazards or risk assessment, once you have more than 5 employees, you got to make documentation. Anything less, you don't need to, according to the regulation of governing manual handling and lifting. So few workplaces stay the same, so it makes sense to review what you are doing regularly. Alright, so look at the table here. These are some problems, right? When carrying out the risk assessment. So, we have the problems here. On it will be your left hand side problems, and the right hand side will be ways of reducing those risks of injury. So the tasks they do involve, for example, holding loads away from the body. So if you're holding load away from the body, right, you gotta improve the workplace layout to improve efficiency. Secondly, twisting, stooping, and reaching upwards. You can reduce the amount of twisting and stooping. So when you do a large vertical movement, you can avoid lifting from the floor level or above shoulder height, especially heavy load. Long carrying distances, you can reduce the distance, right, to avoid when doing the risk assessment. Strenuous push or pull, you can avoid repetitive handling. And insufficient rest or recovery time, that's if you overwork, right? You can barely work allowing one set of muscle to rest while another is used. For example, if you're using your hands too much, right, you can take rest at intervals, right? So while the hands at rest, you can probably move and do something else with the feet. Avoid weight imposed by process. Now, that means a work rate imposed by process. For example, you're having this, let's say this is a cartoon box. Rather than trying to pull it, you can actually push it and slide it once it's a level surface. Right? So it makes work easier. Questions?
No.
You are good? Alright. So it's simple, right? Now when you will load, you have a heavy or bulky load, you can try to make it lighter or less bulky. Right? If it's difficult to grasp, like you have an object and you can't hold it properly, you can try to make it easier or try to find your comfort zone or comfort spot. Right? So you can handle the object better. Unstable or likely to move unpredictably, like even like animals, right? You gotta make more stable. Right? Try to control them then. Or for example, sharp or hot, like even let's say the solid wood, right? If it is hot and the edge is sharp, what you need to do is about stacking, we talk about awkwardly stacked. So if something is awkwardly stacked, you have to ask the supplier to help by providing handles or smaller. For example, you have a container, right? You know most any carton box doesn't come with a handle, right? So you're going to do, you can ask the person who ever providing these things, right? To make them available with handles. So you can handle them better. If something is too large to handle or to see over, right? For example, we talk about like material rack. You know material rack, where you pack the material in the shelf, right? If it's too high, right? And you cannot reach to handle or to place an object here, right? You can consider using a ladder. And not try to stretch and actually place something up there. Thirdly, we deal with work environment. So in work environment, you have restrictions on posture. So what you need to do is remove obstacles or obstructions to free movement. That would be if space is too confined or narrow. Bumpy, obstructed or slippery floor. So if the floor is uneven or slippery, right, you need to provide better flooring or something more appropriate to work on. Vibration at the floor level, so you can avoid steeps and steps around. Hot, cool, humid condition, so you can prevent hot and cold conditions as well. Gusts of wind or strong movement. So with this here, you have appropriate lighting now for your ability, right, to move through the wind. Poor lighting condition, well, as I said, improves lighting. Restriction of movement from clothes or personal protective equipment. So let's say your overall is too bulky or loose, right? Then ensure the clothes and the footwear is suitable for the work that you need to do. Because that by itself could cause injury. Now, individual capacity, right, or ability to do the job. So, if you require user capability, example, the above average strength or agility, you can pay particular attention to those who have physical weakness in terms of assisting them. Endanger those with health problems and learning physical disabilities. So, for example, like you're talking about a pregnant worker, in a case, you gotta take care of them, right? Be your daughter's keepers. Engage a pregnant woman, you can give your employee more information, example, about the range of tasks they are likely to face. And lastly, call for special information or training. So, you provide more training and see what the training is about. And last but not least, you get advice from an occupational health advisor if needed to. Okay, so let's move on here. How far must I reduce the risk? So to balance the level of reasonable practice level, this means balancing the level of risk against measures needed to control the risk in terms of money, time, and trouble. I think that's pretty much straightforward, right? So you have to provide mechanical assets in every case. You should definitely provide mechanical aids. That's how speak aids, right? ALA. You should definitely provide mechanical aids if it is reasonable practicable to do so. And the risk identified in your risk assessment can be reduced or eliminated by this means. But you should consider mechanical aids in other situations as well. They can improve productivity as well as safety. Even something as simple as stack truck can make a big improvement. So what you're speaking about the mechanical aids would be things like the forklift, right? Mechanical machines that will make the lifting easier. Cranes, very good. Now, as you're using these things, the mechanical aids, you will need training as well. Because no one is perfect and they cannot handle something that they're not knowledgeable of, right?
Yes.
So, training is important, but remember that on its own, it can only overcome. The lack of mechanical aids could be one problem to your environment, also to the load or bad working condition. Now, the training that you guys will take for this will be training to cover manual handling risk factors and how injuries can occur. Secondly, how to carry out safe manual handling lifting, including good handling techniques. Appropriate system of work for the individual task and environment. Use of mechanical aids and practical work to allow the trainer to identify and put right anything the trainee is or were doing safely. Now some points, right? So practical tips suitable for training people in safe manual handling lifting. So one of the points when you think before lifting or handling, right? So before you actually move an object, you gotta think before handling it. You gotta plan the lift, right? Or you can use handling aids. Okay? Adopt a stable position. Now this will be, the feet should be apart with one leg slightly forward to maintain balance. Now you look at the coaster here, you see the guy in the wind? He stop and think, right? This is the first point. Second, the position of the feet, right? And then we look at adopt a stable position. Get a good hold. Now where possible, the load should be hugged as close as possible to the body. So see here, he's adopting a good posture. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Don't flex the back or any further while lifting. This requirement is actually get a grip, a firm grip. It's not actually kissing the body or the back. Because you know, this will cause injury to the spine. Keep the head up when handling. So you notice after the guy would have moved the feet up, his head is facing forward. Right? So it's actually on his side on where you want to move this object towards. Move smoothly, you'll be walking forward. Alright, so it says don't lift or handle more than can be easily managed. So if the weight is too much and you can't handle it, you gotta leave it, right? And secondly, put down, then adjust. Now look at the same thing here. I have the diagram. So before actually moving on, you stop and think. You position your feet. The object is in your feet. You adapt a good posture. Get a grip, a forward grip, and then you actually stand up, right? By using the knees, effort on the knees to stand up. And you put down, then adjust. So the actual object, after you set up and move it from one point to another, you put it down, then adjust your arms, your knees, right? You have to extend it. Good handling techniques for pushing and pulling. So here are some practical points to remember when locals are pushed or pulled. Handling device. Aids such as barrows and trolleys should have handle height that are between the shoulder and waist. Devices should be well maintained with wheels at once smooth. The law requires that equipment is maintained when you buy a new trolley. And make sure they are good quality with large diameter wheels made for suitable material with castor bearings, etc. Which will last a minimal maintenance and consulting employees and safety representative will help as they know what works and what won't. So basically, the handle device, which is having a trolley, right? You're saying that it will have proper wheels so you can push and move smoothly, right? So that will actually reduce maintenance, and you won't spend too much of money on it. Questions? Nothing? Okay, good. That's for the force. You are following the handle, right? Right, as I move here. So force, as a rough guide, the amount of force that needs to be applied to move a load over a flat or level surface using a well-maintained handling aid is at least 2% of the load weight. For example, if the load weight is 400 kg, then the force needed to it is 8 kg. The force needed would be larger, perhaps a lot larger, if conditions are not perfect. Example, wheels not in the right position for a device that is fully maintained. The operator should try to push rather than pull, then moving the load, provided they can see over it and control steering and stooping. Remember we talked about the box, the object, rather than actually pulling it, you just push it and slide it. And this is a typical example of using force, right, to move the object. So slopes, we're moving on, right? Employees should get rid of them from all work and whenever necessary. If they have to negotiate or slope or ramp, as pushing and pulling force can be very high. For example, if the load is 400 kgs, is moved up a slope of 1 in 12, about 5%, the required force is about 30 kg. Even in ideal conditions, good wheels and a smooth slope, this is above the guidelines weight for men and well above guideline weight for women. So basically the slope, right, is over 1 to 12 inch, right? That's about 5% the required force, right, of 30 kg. So even though you're having good guidelines, right, it is over the weight for a normal male or female to actually move the object. Now these are two other things to consider. Uneven surfaces. Moving an object over soft and uneven surface require high forces. An uneven surface, the force needed to start the load moving will increase 10% of the load weight. Although this might be offset to some extra extent by using larger wheels. Soft ground may be worse to actually move an object. And lastly, stance and pace. To make it easy to push or pull, employees should keep their feet well away from the load and go no faster than walking speed. This will stop them from becoming too tired. So, by moving an object, you don't want to move it too fast, right? Because of a long distance, it will make you tired. So just taking a normal walking speed. Now, how do you know if there is a risk of injury? It is a matter of judgment in each case. But there are certain things to look out for, such as people coughing, sweating, excessive fatigue, bad posture, cramp for areas, awkward heavy load, or people with a history of back trouble. Operators can often highlight which activities is unpopular, difficult, or hard work. Now these are some things to take into consideration in actually moving or lifting objects. Right? If you're having difficulty with these things here, like coughing, sweating, excess fatigue, bad posture, cramp, more areas, right? You shouldn't actually move or lift anything. It is difficult to be precise, so many factors vary between jobs, workplace, and people. But the general risk assessment guidelines in next section should help to identify when it needed to do more detailed risk assessment. So these are some general risk assessment guidelines, right? So you have the diagram before which we refer to as diagram 1, right? Which is quick and easy and contains guiding weights for lifting and lowering in the zone. Okay. Look at the diagram here, diagram 1. I think they're talking about this here. Okay. Diagram 1. lowering. So we're having a picture of a woman and a man, and it's showing you from the waist height to the shoulder height, the weight of the object you can lift at your elbow, right, distance, and the arms pulling out here. You'll see a different area. It could be different weight. For example, the waist, the hands straight down, but only fetch up to or lift up to 25 kg. That's up to the elbow weight, right? Then stretch your hand fully out, you'll be up to 15 kg, you'll be less. Likewise, if your hand is at your waist height, you can fetch up to 20 kg. When you carry your hand straight out, it will be half of them weight, right? Because there's more force on the hands than stretching out. And the same applies for females. The same thing is in the hand, right?
Yeah.
Alright. So for the handle, instead of twisting, reduce the guidelines weight with the handle or twist to the side during the operation. As a rough guide, reduce it by 10%. If your handle twist beyond 45 degrees, that means it just like beyond this here, right? And by 20%, the handle twist beyond 90 degrees. So you gotta avoid twisting, right? The body and handling objects. Alright, so look at the second diagram 2, right? We are there? Frequently lifting and lowering. The guidelines weight is for infrequent operations of the torting operations per hour, where the pace of work is not forced adequately or pauses to rest or use different muscles are possible. So you can do more torting lifting, right? For an hour, right? You can actually take some rest for intervals, or don't use all the muscles there. If your load is supported by a handler for any length of time, reduce the weight by 40%. If your operation is repeated once or twice a minute, by 50%. If it is repeated 5 to 8 times a minute, and by 80%, where it is repeated more than 12 times a minute. So, if the operation, and you're going to move something, right, more than once or twice a minute, right, by, let's say 50%, you can repeat the process of 5 to 8 times a minute, right? And if you got to work for 80% of the time, or in a minute, you can only do 12 movements. You follow me, right?
Yes, sir.
Sure?
Yes.
Steve, you know that. So you want to pushing and pulling. So pushing and pulling, just over the table. Right? The task is within the guidelines. In the diagram, table 2 is not exceeded. So table 2, force to stop the load. There's a weight of men and a weight of women. Right? Or it takes 20 kg to actually stop a load when it's under force. Or in a female, it will take 15 kg to stop a load, which is under force or movement. Sustained force to keep the load in motion. So you're actually moving, right, with the object, right? It actually takes about 7 kg in motion. For men, it will be 10 kg, and women it will be 7 kg. This is supposed to be here, right? Let's actually move the page more farther. Alright, so we're actually at the end of the handle, right?
Yeah.
Most equal handling techniques for pushing and pulling, for example, forces required to push up the load. So using this result here, right, we'll need to make more detailed assessment. So it's response to diagram 1, which we were talking about, that's this here. Diagram 1. can refer to the poster here. This diagram 1 and this is diagram 2 in the notes, right? Or refer to. So in the first step, it shows a manual handling with the guidelines papers. Bearing in mind the reduced limit of twisting and frequently lift. You do not need to do any more in most cases, but you need to make a more detailed assessment. So remember we talk about risk assessment? So I'll come back to that. So that will be the conditions given for using the guidelines. For example, the load can be readily grasped with both hands. So, you know what this here, right? The person doing the lifting has reduced capacity through ill health or pregnancy. So if a person, right, is doing a lifting, let's say a pregnant person, right, they should actually avoid doing it because it could cause injury or strenuous effects on the body. Number 3, handling operation must take place with the hands beyond the boxes in the diagram, or the guideline figures in the diagram are not exceeded. So that's we're talking here, right? The box should be in the hand. Right? Once it is a safe, appropriate weight for the safe lifting weight. And for pushing and pulling, you should make more detailed assessment. If 1, there are extra risk factors like uneven floors or considered spaces, that would be the floor not level, right? The workers can push or pull a load with their hands between knuckle and shoulder height. Thirdly, the load has to be moved more than about 20 meters. You gotta take a break, right? Without a break. And lastly, guideline figure table 2 is likely to be exceeded. So you have to forward to the guidelines in figure 2 or table 2. So they're basically saying if the weight exceed, right, or that is moving, you should not actually do it. You should take that into consideration. So you're going to look at the video. You will understand manual handling lifting.
Ergonomic engineers later determined that a ramrod straight spine was not necessarily the best position for lifting and handling material. It was determined that the spine should not be totally straight, but kept in its natural curvature as much as possible, as shown here. Warning of treating back pain and time lost due to workplace accidents make this subject a must for any safety training program. That's why you're watching this training program. You should consider before starting any lifting job or activity. It may seem like a lot to remember, but after a short time, these techniques can become second nature to you, just like driving a car or riding a bicycle. Check the balance, weight, and size of the load to determine if it needs to be moved by team lifting, a mechanical device, or if it should be moved manually. You may not have to lift much at all. Ask yourself the question, should a hand truck, pallet jack, or forklift be used for moving items distances, or where repetitive lifting and moving may be required? Your feet so they are comfortably separated, one slightly behind the other, to help maintain your balance during the lift or first movement. Move the object as close to the center of your body as possible. This will allow for good balance and reduce strain. Whenever possible, use a free hand or the front of your legs for additional support when lifting items in awkward positions or when you can't get close to the item. It doesn't take much time to assess the material handling situation and apply these techniques. That's about all we can cover in this short training overview. It is up to each and every employee to apply safe work practices to the job. Your supervisor or trainer will provide you with more specific training and procedures as it directly relates to your unique work environment. Use the techniques outlined in this video. Use common sense and good judgment, and you will be well on your way to preventing painful back issues. Take the time to handle material safely each and every shift, and don't be afraid to ask for help to accomplish a difficult or awkward lift. Thank you for your attention, and work safely.
feedback form. So the feedback form would be what we're using, so how you're going to rate me in terms of how I actually deliver the lesson, right? If you have a speech, after filling out the evaluation form, you will reach out to me. Alright, let me have the worksheet in the meanwhile you fill out the feedback form. Please fill out the feedback form. Okay, so look at the feedback form. There's a P there. SA means strongly agreed. A means that you agree. SWA means you somewhat agree. Whether you have any doubts. D means you disagree with the statement. And SD means you strongly disagree. So you see the abbreviations there beside the table, towards the right hand side. Right? For every statement, you take one of the abbreviation, right? So that works on the top above the table. If you look at the bottom, there's a rating of 1 to 5. Right? Strongly agree would be rating of 5, agree, rating of 4, somewhat agree, rating of 3, disagree, rating of 2, and strongly disagree would be rating of 1. So that's how you rate the training between 1 to 5. Right now at the back of the form, after completing that rating, there's about, well, on the front of the form, to the back, there's about 4 questions that you guys would have to answer. Okay? Okay, guys, get into the form. So the page, you can start sending out to your phone, right? No problem. Finish?
Right. They put snacks and breakfast.
Okay, guys, so that's the conclude our lesson for today. I must say thank you very much for being here and participating in this class session. Okay? Alright, guys, so this brought us to the end of the session. So until next time, we'll do a practical demonstration of manual handling. Okay?
Yes,
So basically, we need to go in the workshop and